Hugh, it's Ryan. This is a bit embarrassing, but I'm just out the front of the studio with my dad in the car because I thought you were recording the interview with Jack Watts today here. And as you know, Dad's a Melbourne supporter, so I thought maybe I'd bring him in and say g'day to Jack. And I've only just remembered that you're actually in Adelaide at Jack's house recording. So I thought instead, if you've got time, I know it's a tight schedule, but maybe you could get Jack to record a video message for Dad or something. I don't know, something like, "Hey Al, sorry I missed you today, mate. But have a good one, champ, and I'll see you around. Go D's," if he's comfortable with that. And then maybe he can add on like, "And you know what? That son of yours, he's actually quite the player. He's got a really good kick on him, and I reckon with the right training and the right support, he could have played AFL. He's maybe even got a chance now. He's got a really good goal sense." Or something. He can play with that. But good luck. Have a good one, and I'll see you soon, honey. Hugh.
To call back, press 22 to replay it.
We're all imperfect, and on this podcast, I'll be chatting with a variety of interesting people who are willing to make themselves vulnerable by sharing their own struggles and imperfections.
Then we'll discuss the invaluable takeaways we can all apply to our own imperfect lives.
I'm Hugh van Cuylenburg from the Resilience Project.
And I'm Ryan Shelton from my mum. And this is The Imperfects. So we just start now.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, our start and finish isn't overly clean, I've noticed.
No. Well,
that's okay, we're learning.
Well, it's kind of like when you meet up with someone for lunch and you've both agreed that you're meeting to talk about a certain thing, but it takes someone to sort of start.
Let's start talking about it now.
Let's start talking about it right now.
Okay. Let's talk about Jack Watts now. No. Let's.
Jeez, Hugh.
Let's talk. Sorry.
This is humiliating. My career's on the line.
So, thank you to everyone for the beautiful feedback on the I mean, it was funny. People were sending the feedback to you and me when really I think the feedback probably Missy Higgins deserves it. She was terrific and the feedback's been lovely. So
yeah, and I think the feedback, well, to Missy, but then also probably to your brother Josh, who edited the whole thing and made us sound a little bit more succinct than maybe we would have.
I think he had about
otherwise.
2.5 hours worth of content.
Yes.
So he did a great job to cut it down. Thank you, Josh.
Did. But yeah, it's true. The feedback that we've got on that first episode, if you're just listening to this for the first time and you haven't heard it before, then there is one other episode. This is the sequel, and they rarely work. So this will be an interesting episode.
Don't say that.
But the Missy Higgins episode was a couple of weeks ago, and the feedback has been amazing. So thank you for listening. If you've shared it with people, if you've told people about it, if it's helped you, and if it's helped someone you know, then that's what this is for.
Yeah, I mean, one of the more common bits of feedback I got or questions was, what was the music? Your intro and outro music?
Yeah, that's a problem.
Which is fine. I mean, it's if you want to know, it's a song called "Keep On" by No Mono.
It's a great song.
It's a beauty. Yeah. I just got a lot of it. In fact, before we actually released this podcast, I sent the raw cut of like our interview. I sent it to two of my really good mates and said, "Can you listen to this? I'd love to get your thoughts on our podcast." And both of them wrote back and said, "That's an awesome song. What is it?"
Oh God.
No comment on the podcast. So.
It's kind of like if you're an actor and you come off stage and you've just done a show and you've poured your soul out and you've like put yourself out there and you come off and your friends are in the audience and you say, "Yeah, so what do you reckon?" Like, "Jeez, how do you remember all those lines?" Oh, God, you must have such a good memory. How do you remember lines? Like, how do you memorize them? Oh, yeah, well, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, dear. So this episode is Jack Watts.
Yep.
One that I'm really excited about, and you watched Jack's career quite closely.
Well, so for those who don't know, Jack Watts, AFL footballer, got drafted as number one player in 2008 to the Melbourne Footy Club, which is the team that I support.
You would have been 26 at that stage, about that?
Yeah, probably around about that.
Were you pretty excited?
We don't need to talk about our age. I think some people probably think I'm in my late 20s, but that's cool. Yeah, 37. So, yes, thanks, Hugh. It's fine. It's fine. It's not a big deal. 37. Feeling great about it. Anyway, this is not about me. So it would have been about 26, and Melbourne, the club, Jack talks about this in the chat with you, but the club was in a terrible spot. We were shocking. It just weren't winning, and all of a sudden this sort of great white knight was drafted, and he was supposed to be the saviour. And as you'll hear in the chat, it just didn't quite go to plan for the club or for Jack. And being one of the people in the stands watching it every week, I was right in the thick of the people watching him, criticising him. It was full on.
Yeah, he became the whipping boy for all their failures, and he copped it.
He did.
Like I can't think of another player who's probably copped it more than Jack. And so last season, I got invited to go and work with Port Adelaide Footy Club, where Jack plays now. And I was fascinated to meet him because I've always wondered, what does this guy do to get through? I just thought, gosh, it must be hard being him. And I've always wondered what his coping strategies were. When I was working with him at Port Adelaide, 2 controversies broke, pretty big ones. Just for those of you who aren't aware of it, who don't follow football, one was a bit of a text message scandal. His ex-partner found messages on his phone, and there were photos that went out of those that were quite incriminating for Jack. And then 5 months later, there was a second controversy involving a photo of him over in Oktoberfest in Germany. Who was a whole lot of insinuations about his behaviour over there that I felt like everyone in Australia had seen those photos. So
to put it really simply, it's like they were photos of him, and it appeared like he was taking a substance, like an illegal substance, when in actual fact it was like a specific Oktoberfest
sugar or something.
That looks really bad, but it's not. But the way that he was taken with it made it look really, really bad. And it was just horrible timing for him. Yeah,
this is the part that was by complete chance. I happened to be at the club the day after that second controversy broke, and I was sitting in and I go into it in an interview with him because we do talk about it, but I've never seen a more broken human being. He was absolutely devastated. Like he was just a shell sitting there in the changing rooms. And as it so turned out, he was on the training track and one of the coaches, Michael Voss, asked if he was okay. And he broke down, he went in the changing rooms, and then I ended up spending about an hour with him, and we talked about it. And he actually shared the story of his life, really. And he actually told me what it's like to be Jack Watts. I mean, the reason Jack shared his story with me was, I think it's quite relevant to the theme of this podcast, is that when you make yourself vulnerable, you do open yourself up to joy and happiness and support and all those kind of things. The club sent me in the room and said, can you go and speak to Jack? And we were getting nowhere with the first 5 minutes. He was just shattered. He wasn't overly comfortable sharing, which is fine.
Yeah.
And then I told him that I had about a relationship that I'd been through many years ago, and it was my fault, the breakup as well. And I just told him that story, and then instantly he was happy to talk about it. And it was, he talked about why in the interview, but we all make mistakes, and I just shared the mistake I'd made, and he felt comfortable to talk. When you make yourself vulnerable, you open yourself up to so many things.
Well, I mean, he's in a culture which is problematic, I guess, in not just in sports, just in Australia and the world generally. And I think, like you often say, it's like it takes adversity like that to be able to grow. And it sounds like from him talking is that he's treating what he did and what happened to him as an opportunity to learn from it and grow from it.
I mean, the other thing you'll see through this, that you'll hear through this, is he's a really lovely person. I've worked with plenty of elite sports people, and I think you're hard pressed to find a more genuine, caring and loving person than Jack. He's a beauty. So
is he the best?
He's the best.
Who's the top 10? Top 10 coolest people you've met. Go.
Reluctant to put him on a chart. He's pretty good. So it was interesting so Josh and I flew over to meet with him in Adelaide at his house. Mm-hmm. And he said, training finishes at 12:30. I'll meet you at 1. And Josh and I had a flight at 3:30. So it's a bit of a deadline to finish the interview at a certain time. But when Josh and I got to his house, I think I messaged him and said, we're here. And he said, I'm still on the team meeting. I'm really sorry. Training's gone over. And so like, that's okay, that's fine. And I could see Josh panicking a little bit, getting his gear out, getting it ready, basically to stick a microphone under Jack's face when he gets home.
Starts talking as he steps out of the car.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Anyway, Josh also managed to find, when we were waiting, found a tennis ball in the driveway and a rolled up newspaper. So...
I mean, a tennis ball, not even with the newspaper, but a tennis ball can solve any situation.
It can, and it did, because we decided to play a game of cricket in his driveway. as we were playing, we heard this car horn sort of beeping. We turned around, and there was a car coming from miles. It was a long street. It was Jack, and he was appealing all the way down the street. It was like this long appeal went for about 30 seconds. And as he rolled past, Josh was batting him and went, "Great technique, Joshy!" Like really loud. Never met Josh before in his life.
Well, he knows. He's heard the myth. He's got a great technique.
So anyway, that was nice for me because the last time I'd seen Jack was in Adelaide pretty soon after the controversies had broke. So it was very nice for me to see someone who had clearly come some way, not all the way to recovery, but...
or he just loves cricket.
Yeah.
Hard to know.
I think he was just appreciating good technique, really.
Yeah, it's a huge turnaround as soon as he saw cricket. Well, I mean, it's an amazing chat and really insightful. I think a lot of people will get a lot out of this.
Absolutely. Jack Watts, enjoy. No, Jack Watts, enjoy? What is that? I don't know how to finish this.
There'll be more people listening than just Jack Watts. Jack Watts, enjoy this. I think you've misunderstood the concept of the podcast. Did you think only Missy heard the last episode? So we send this out to anyone who wants to listen.
Jack Watts, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast for a chat.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us at your house as well.
Yes. You met the dog. You were here half an hour before I was.
Yeah,
Made you wait. Beautiful.
That's right.
Good
We've got a good game of street cricket happening out there with a rolled up newspaper.
Looked like a bit of fun. Joshy had a good high elbow out the
Yeah,
front.
he did. So thank you so much for doing the interview. Round 1 this season, you had a terrific game. And straight after the game, you were interviewed by Cam Mooney, and the interview went pretty viral, and it was viewed by many, many people. He asked you the question. He said, "How hard has the last 6 months been for you?" And you went to answer, but you were quite emotional and didn't actually get an answer. The dog's quite emotional as well.
Yeah, he's a bit of a sook too.
You didn't get an answer out because you got quite emotional, and then he started talking about footy. Straight away, so we never got to sort of explore your answer. So I sort of want to do that today, but before we go there, I thought it might be nice just to give a bit of context around you as a person, just to find out a little bit about maybe your childhood to start with.
Yeah. Born in Sydney, then moved to Melbourne when I was 1, and I had a pretty amazing childhood, to be honest. Loving family and 2 older sisters, parents still together, and grew up as a pretty lucky kid, pretty fortunate. My dad was probably, he is probably a bit of an idol of mine and hero of mine, and, probably taught me a lot of life lessons growing up, and that I was very fortunate to have really someone like that growing up. And then I guess going forward, as I grew up, I was pretty, I was reasonable at sport, and I loved school. I loved growing up, my primary school was just around the corner, and I made some, lifelong friends there. And yeah, as far as childhoods go, I didn't have much to complain about it at all. And, I think of what certain, some kids have to go through as children, as, copping abuse or, a broken family or an abusive father or mother or whatever it is, trying to deal with that as a young child. I can't even imagine what that would be like and how that would affect your life going forward. So for me, I really didn't have any of that growing up, and consider myself very lucky. Yeah.
And then so we fast forward a little bit, 2008, I think it was your number 1 draft pick for Melbourne Footy Club. Looking back on your time at Melbourne, how was that?
Oh, I guess the overarching theme would probably be, pretty tough. It was a struggle, definitely. I think as I said, like growing up, I was used to, as most kids that get drafted, they're best player in their team, and I would have won 9 grand finals growing up as a kid, and basketball was the same, won every game we played, and then to sort of, I guess you get drafted number 1, so you're meant to be a pretty good player, and it just didn't quite, the fairy tale didn't really continue from that point on. And a lot of was
it a dream come true? Like was it something you always wanted when discussions came out about you as a kid? I could be number 1. Were you thinking, I want that so much? Or
I think so. I think I probably wasn't one of those kids that, I guess basketball was a lot more serious for me growing up. So I wasn't out there, all I want to do is play AFL footy and, watching my diet as a 15, 16-year-old and, the kids that are coming through now, they're, it's a different sort of game to what it was back then. But, I just loved playing my footy. I loved, the mateship and the camaraderie and the enjoyment you get from playing and winning. And, it helps being pretty good at it. And you get that sort of praise and that good feeling that goes with that. But yeah, I guess it's a different ballgame going from playing, school footy under 18s and then being draft pick number 1 and, coming into an AFL environment, which is a business. It's a big business and it's pretty ruthless. And if you don't get the results early, you, as I saw, you do cop it. And I think there was a number of sort of different factors that led to that. I guess, you could talk for hours about everything that went on at the club and whatnot, but it was just a hard couple of years. Like early on, I think you probably get a little grace period where you get the benefit of the doubt as a young kid. You're just developing, but then year 2 and year 3, and other guys in your draft are going off and playing in grand finals and playing good footy, and we were still on the bottom of the ladder. 2 wins in a couple of seasons, 4 wins in another couple of seasons. Start the year at 0-10, 0-9. And, I'm meant to be this saviour that's meant to turn the club around, and I was getting 10 touches a game and just battling through, and probably should have been playing in the 2s. And then obviously just the media scrutiny that sort of came with it. I think I was a bit of a, the club sort of needed that notoriety at the time, and so they used, they've got the number 1 pick, so obviously you're going to try and get as much media as you can to get some sponsors and get some interest and generate some hope for the members and all of that kind of stuff. And
so you felt that at that time in your career? Did you feel a little bit of expectation and the pressure that came with the club building you up?
I think at the time, I'm not sure if I was completely aware of it. Being in year 11, year 12 and being pretty young, I probably wasn't super aware of how out of proportion it was compared to what other people had probably had in the past. I just was going along for the ride and was part of the journey and thought that was normal, But, looking at it now, having a press conference for your first game when you're in year 12 and press conference midweek to talk about you making your debut, it's a bit strange, really.
Yeah.
I've sort of said it in a couple of interviews, but I was told at the start of the year that if I played it, if I did this program for 10 weeks where I was coming in doing some gym work and playing with the Casey Scorpions, that, in 10 weeks I'd be ready to make my debut, and you'd debut against Collingwood on Queen's birthday. And I thought, awesome. Like, all right, I'll stick to this program, and that's, how they must do it. But, being in the system now for 11 years, it's not really how you earn your first game, to be honest. A bit of good form would be nice going into it, and maybe earning the right to play, make the team. And but yeah, that was where we were at the time. The club was on its knees, and we had to. I guess it was probably for trying to get people at the game to get some ticket sales because it was our home game, and I think we were in $6 million worth of debt, and there was a lot going on. But yeah, I guess the hard bit was just the scrutiny, and
so it was pretty relentless for you as a player. I mean, a lot of us, I don't think many people understand what it would be like to turn up to work. If I go to work, if I go and do a talk and I don't do a great talk, people will sort of sit there looking a bit disengaged. But for you and your job, if you turn up, people will stand there, and while you're working, they yell at you and tell you why you're not doing well or what they think of you. What's that like? How brutal is that?
Yeah,
for someone like yourself who does, you're a good person, so and you do concern yourself with the way other people's
take it on a fair bit. And it was hard. I think it's impossible to ignore. So I did my best. Like I really tried to just shut it all out after a while, but you just can't, because your mates see it on front page of the paper, and your family goes through it, your family sees it, and then someone says something to them that they saw, and just you really can't get away from it. So when it was at its worst, and it was just relentless, and Melbourne's made the biggest mistake of their time as a footy club, picking this bloke, and he's no good. And I think from the outside, like, people probably see it and it doesn't look all that bad, or it doesn't, with me, obviously I think people have sort of recognised that it was pretty bad. But when it's not affecting you directly and it's not you every day, it probably doesn't seem quite as full on and relentless. But when it is you every day, and you're going through that, and you're trying to stay positive, and you're trying to, improve as a young player, and you're trying to be a good person, you're trying to get out there and, see the kids, and, it's just just hard work, I guess. We watched Adam Goods' doco recently at Port Adelaide at the club, and it's probably a bit like that. I reckon a lot of people probably watch that and go, shit, I didn't realise it was that bad. I didn't realise it was like that. Sure, but if you actually put yourself in his shoes and what he was copying constantly, and because we could go off and probably wouldn't read about it or hear about it for 4 days or 5 days or a week or two. But for him, it would be every day.
Wakes up to it every morning.
Exactly. And I think that's sort of where the media don't realise the impact they have on people. And, I find it, I don't know, I've had an interesting relationship with the media over the years, but how some people, look at themselves in the mirror and decide to do that as a job, just try and rip some young kid down, or someone who's going through a shocking time in their life, and it's just their job to, make it even worse. It's like, I don't know how you could sort of do that. But
or to highlight someone's struggles. Yeah, basically.
Exactly. And dig even deeper and try to find more. And I don't know, it would be a hard living, I think.
What does it do? You speak about a really happy childhood. What does it do to your family when your parents see their son going through that, and you're out there and you're in the paper all the time? And I don't know if they read these things or they listen to these things, but what's the impact on you and your family? I suppose the relationship with your family.
Yeah, it was pretty tough, to be honest. Even now, I mean, my dad was probably, he didn't miss a game of mine of basketball, footy from when I was 6 years old until I started playing AFL and travelling and stuff. So he was there every game. It's most supportive parent. And
did you love that? Was that a great thing to have?
Yeah, loved it. I loved it. And, he was pretty hard on me at times as well, but he was just trying to get me better and improve. And I'd hate it because I thought I played all right, and he's telling me that, you got to do this better, or you're marking, you got to attack it a bit harder, or you're kicking, you got to improve this. And as a young kid, you you sort of just want to have a bit of fun, and you're out there and you think you're playing pretty well, but in the end it's probably the best thing for me, and it's helped me a lot over the years. But mum, on the other hand, she was probably a bit more backseat, still extremely supportive, and loved what I was doing and loved the sport, and would get involved with the other mums and would help out at Brighton Grammar. She'd be cooking the lunches up for us, and she'd be doing all those things, but probably not quite as involved. But then, once it became, the media, I guess I got drafted, and then it was, there's a lot of media scrutiny and things sort of, it just changed for me and mum and our relationship, I guess. And, I couldn't tell you how many times I've come home and it's just, we just blew up because, she just couldn't, or she still can't get away from reading everything, watching everything, commenting on things. And I guess she never used to do that with me as a kid. Growing up, playing footy for East Sandringham, she never, wanted to know what the coach was saying, or wanting to know what was going on behind closed doors, or, checking in how I was, or whatever it is. But yeah, going through those first couple of years with the media sort of criticising me as they were, I think it really affected her, and then that affected us, and
As in your relationship?
Yeah, big time. I mean, I'd come home from training, and I've already had a shit day as it is, as a lot of them were back then. And the last thing you want your mum asking you about is what's going on at footy and what's you just want to be her son like you have been for 18 years, and she just couldn't help herself, and I probably handled it poorly as well in sort of getting my back up against it and sort of getting on the front foot rather than trying to help her through it. But I'd come home and she's got the footy on TV and she's got the SEN blaring out of the radio, and it's almost like she was feeling sorry for me the way she's talking to me. And as a young kid, like, I just felt terrible because I felt like I was letting her down and letting everyone down as it was. So you sort of just, for me, I just wanted to treat me normally and like nothing is happening.
So is that the overriding feeling you had at that point in your life? You're letting people down?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And it's just not only the club and your team and the coaches, and because you're getting told that it's not good enough, you need to improve, you need to do this, and then you go out and we're losing every week, and so then it's hard for your family and your friends, and it is, because they're involved with you and they want to support you, and and then they're copping it, and then you go out and someone will have a go and say something to you when you're out having lunch or you're out having a beer, and why are you having a beer? You shouldn't be having a beer. You're losing every week. Like, you should be training. It's like, so then you have to leave that place and all your mates are there, and you have to, so it's just like constant, that pressure and that feeling of making life harder for a lot of other people. It was,
So we fast forward a few years and you make the move to Port Adelaide Football Club. So for you, you're thinking fresh start, new city, start over again. And back then I remember watching that and reading that. I didn't know you then, and I was thinking, I'm so excited for Jack because I think he just needs a fresh start. And then you're caught up in a controversy. I mean, you're the first one to say, at your own doing, we've all made mistakes in our lives, and some of us have made some really bad mistakes. But to have those mistakes splashed over every form of social media, so the whole world reads them, or certainly I'm sure it feels like the whole world is reading that, and then you push your way through that, and you're recovering, you're getting through it, and then another controversy comes out involving you, and this is when you're trying to have your fresh start, a new club start again. How hard's that? That was
that's as tough as what I've ever gone through, and still is, to be honest. It's still pretty hard to get away from and just move on completely from all of that stuff. The frustration of coming to a new club and that first pre-season, that first start of the first year I was there, it was the most fun I've ever had playing footy, and then obviously what happened with my ex, and it being so public, it was that 2 weeks. I mean, I've been fortunate enough, I've had an amazing life, and I've had incredible, as we spoke about, my childhood and teachings and all of that kind of stuff. But in terms of feeling down in the dumps and depressed, and I never really understood that until probably that couple of weeks.
What does that look like, though? I mean, you're saying depressed and down in the dumps. What does that look like from a day-to-day basis for you?
Well, I was staying with my best mate back in Melbourne and his girlfriend when it all sort of started and came out, and I pretty much didn't leave their house for a week unless it was to go and have a meeting with Port Adelaide, or have a meeting with the AFL integrity department, or have a meeting with my manager to discuss how the hell are we going to handle this. I was pretty much, other than that, I was on the couch and just breaking down in tears at random times, and feeling like, I guess I just felt like this, it's never going to get any better. like I'm done for now, you know, like I guess I tried to be like growing up and, you know, I tried to be a good person and I really valued that sort of side of things. And then to be a shit person and for that to come out for everyone to see, for anyone that's ever going to know me again, you know, any future employer or any future partner or any future friend or anyone that is ever going to know me, they can find that out at any stage that they want and, you know, straight away have that image of me. Yeah, you just feel like there's no hope. That's what I felt like. And yeah, I guess it's a bit the same because as what we were speaking about before, like when it's you can't really get that broader perspective. You know, I had a lot of mates and family and stuff saying that, you know, it'll get better and, you know, people forget about it eventually. But when it's you just can't see that happening and you just, yeah. And I mean, in the end, it's been the best thing. It's been the best thing that's happened to me because it's
really,
well, yeah. Because at the time, you know, I probably didn't realize what I was doing and realize that, you know, I was, you know, really pushing the boundaries way too far and doing things I shouldn't have. And, you know, clearly I know there was certain things I shouldn't have been doing, but to have it blow up in your face like that, it certainly shines a light on it a lot sharper. You know, I think some amazing change has come from that, and for me personally, and you sort of, it probably gave me a recalibration sort of process on who I want to be, what I want to be seen as. Do I want to keep going down that path, or do you want to change things and you know, be a different person? And it wasn't to do it for anyone else other than myself, really, in the beginning, and actually just get back on a track where you feel worthy of meeting new people and, you know, worthy as a human being again. Yeah. Really, that's what it got to. Yeah,
because you've said to me previously that when times are tough at Melbourne and when you're going through the heartache of the expectation and feeling like you're letting people down, the way you coped with that was to make sure you're always a good person and that you were treating people the way they wanted to be treated, have a good character, all that kind of stuff. I guess what is so hard about what happened to you recently is that it just called into question your character, really, didn't it? And in front of so many people. Yep. I remember, as chance had it, I was at the club the day after the second controversy broke earlier in the year, and I was in the lecture theatre or the meeting room with everyone, and you were sitting in the corner. I don't think I've ever seen a more devastated person. I soon after, I remember going onto the training track, and I think Michael Voss just checked in with you. I think he was the first person, I think he said, "Hey, you all right?" And you broke down in tears straight away. That was, I mean, because you'd done a lot of work after the first controversy. That's when you made a decision, right, I need to make some changes. And then even though the second controversy happened ages ago, it kind of looks like Jack Watts is up to his same old tricks again. Yeah. But in actual fact, you've done a lot of work to improve yourself, and that comes out again. I mean, I mean it, I've never seen anyone look so devastated before.
Yeah, I think exactly what you said there, like, you know, copping shit about being a average footy player. You know, I guess I've always been able to have a bit of a broader view of the world, and, you know, if that's the worst thing that ever happens to me, that I'm not quite as good as what people wanted me to be, and chasing a Sharon around, you know, I can deal with that. And I've got great mates, I've got a great family, and, you know, that was sort of how I dealt with it, and could get through it pretty positively and feel all right about it. But yeah, this most recent one was just very different. It's, yeah, I guess you no longer, like, I felt just like a terrible person, and yeah, I probably had nothing really to fall back on after that. And yeah, all those moments, I can remember that exact moment when Vossi came over and we were walking out, and I just couldn't keep it together. And it's because, you know, for that 6 weeks beforehand and 8 weeks beforehand, 3 months beforehand, you know, you're going through it every day and you're feeling shit every day. Sure, you have your moments where you get away from it and you stop thinking about it, but it constantly comes back. And as you said, that next one comes out 5 months later, and it was before all of this, but because of what I've done and because of what had come out previously, it's going to be there, isn't it? For and it will be going forward.
One of the reasons I certainly felt empathy for you was because I'd made a similar mistake in my life, in my past, and it was a relationship of, I think it was 6 years, and my partner found messages on my phone that not proud of, and ended pretty much, well, it did end our relationship, and so I felt enormous empathy for him. I mean, the thing that I didn't have to deal with was the whole world didn't know about it. It was just me and that person. We had to deal with it together, and our families knew. We were very open with our families with what had happened, but no one else knew. So I can't claim to understand what it's like when everyone knows what's going on. But I remember having that conversation with you, and it seemed to be, it was quite a, I felt like it for you. It
was a big moment for me. I think when you opened up, I think when it's happening to you and it's all, you feel like you're the only one that's ever done it, and you're the only one that's ever gone through something like that. And yeah, when you opened up to me that day, I guess because I think you'd worked for us for a couple of months with Port Adelaide, and I just admired what you had done and what you were doing, and the way that you were dedicating your life to trying to make other people happy. To hear that someone that I absolutely admired had also made a mistake in their life, but it's not the end of your life, and you can actually grow from it, move forward, and do great things after that. It was just a huge light bulb moment for me that every time, even now, when I sort of feel like I'm down in the dumps and I'm really struggling, I think everyone has made mistakes. The greatest people in the world have made mistakes, and clearly you're not proud of it. But it happens in life. We're not perfect, and to sort of come to that realization, and just to talk to someone else who had been through something similar, or and realize that you're not the only person, and it's not it sort of turned me around, I think, from that point. And
well, that's interesting. I didn't realize. I could tell from looking in your face you were very interested in that. I didn't know that was the impact that it had, but I remember when I left, I was on the plane flying back to Melbourne, and it made me think about the power of vulnerability, because I hadn't planned to share that with you. I just remember looking at you when I got to the club thinking, poor Jack, I've done the same thing, but I wasn't dragged through the media for it, through the ringer with the media, because I'm a no one. But I was, so I never planned to tell you, but I remember thinking, I'm so happy I told Jack that, because I feel like we're going to have some really great conversations off the back of it. And for me, it was a reminder of how important it is that we are willing to be more vulnerable with each other, with people that we meet, and to be ourselves and to tell our real story, because I didn't know it, but at the time I knew you were interested in the story, but I realise now why, which is I'm so happy that I was able to share that story with you.
Yeah, so am I, to be honest. Yeah, just that real, genuine story of who you actually are, and it's hard to have that conversation, isn't it? It's hard to just sort of get into that with people.
Yeah.
But it just, especially when you're going through a hard time, I think it just helps incredibly.
Well, it was our third conversation, maybe. And we were both sharing the most darkest moments of our life, and a third conversation, and have a very strong relationship, I think, off the back of that, being vulnerable, and which I think is I think it's a really important thing for everyone to understand, that being vulnerable opens you up to really great things. Yeah. So how long does it take you to get to a point of being where I saw you, which was probably the lowest moment you've had in your life? Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
How long does it take you to have the energy or the resolve to say to yourself, right, I think I need to start moving on and getting past this? Does that? And I'm only asking this because there's a lot of people listening who might be going through their own challenges. They might not be as public, but it could be a relationship breakdown. It could be losing a loved one. It could be friendship issues or whatever it is. Yeah. And so many people will know that feeling of going, oh, I've never felt this bad before. How long did it take you to make a decision to start to make some changes?
I think probably getting back into some sort of schedule and routine. So if I had nothing to do and been able to stay at just in my home or whatever, I don't know how long it would have taken, to be honest, but just actually getting out of the house. And I organised a little training camp up north about 2 weeks before we went back to training, and just something to do. And I got one of my best mates, and he was, generous enough to join me up there. And we just had 2 weeks up there training away. And, there's a lot of conversations every night about what the hell am I doing and who do you want to be? What are you going to change? What are you going to do? So that was probably 3 or 4 weeks after it all came out. How long does it take to actually get past it? I don't know. I'm probably still dealing with a lot of it, and dealing with, just that. I mean, the breakup as well is something that probably goes unnoticed.
How long were you with your ex for?
I was with her for nearly 2 years, I think.
Right, okay. So she's a significant person in your life.
Yeah, she was, and I loved her to death. Like, there's no doubt about it, and it's hard. A lot of people say, "Oh, whatever. How could you do what you were doing?" But it was a really tough sort of thing, losing her and then going through the worst part of your life ever, and then not having your best friend there that you've relied on for 2 years. And it was just a whole combination of things. And
do you still talk to her at all? Is there any contact there, or was she part of the process of trying to move through what had happened to you?
Yeah, I do. I do still talk to her, and it's it's pretty complicated. Yeah, it's I guess initially it was just anger, and then from her side of things, which was obviously understandable, and then it all came out, and then there's anger on my behalf because how could you do that? And then there's the whole side of it when you go far out. We still love each other, and you still care for each other, and I just want you here. And it was a pretty mixed up couple of months, and it still is mixed up, to be honest. We're still talking, and it's still just those emotions. It's hard to deal with, because on one side you love each other, and on another side it's you've let each other down, and clearly me more so than her. But it's hard to sort of deal with those emotions and act logically, I guess, in that situation. But I guess trying hard.
Yeah. You work your way through the challenging pre-season. Come out in round one and you had a great game, and I know Cam Mooney went straight to you to interview. You did a terrific interview, and it was hard for you to talk about some of the stuff, and so you talked mainly about football. But I remember seeing in the interview you sort of ran off and you were high-fiving the crowd, and your body language looked like it was a really big step for you. Like, it just seemed like it may not have been, but it's what it looked like. It was a big step in your recovery. Fast forward a week, you're playing against Carlton and you get tackled, and your leg's broken, or you break your leg, and not just broken, but a proper ankle's out of place, leg's broken, and it's a bad one. It's out for the season. What does that do to you mentally when I'm guessing a big part of your recovery is to play good football, and you play good football, you're going to go a long way to feeling better. Yeah. What does that do to you? What kind of place are you in after you broke your leg?
Yeah, I think the thing that felt so good about round one, and probably was just the club, sticking by me through all this. First of all, getting me over, putting their faith in me and the supporters, and then letting them down and creating this drama for the club and creating all this stuff, and then just to be able to give back a little bit. That was sort of my goal, and the whole pre-season I was pretty determined to try and give back to the club, and being able to do that round one was a really good feeling. And then I guess round two, it was you can't really do much about it, but I think it was hard, but I think I'd made some really good changes that were pretty ingrained by that stage, and so yeah, I guess a lot of the time for people going into rehab for the first time, it's a dark place, and it's tough and it's lonely, and that's when they might struggle a little bit. But I think maybe for me, having struggled a lot more than just having an injury, it was probably, I almost saw it as just part of that improvement as a person, and yeah, I guess I couldn't really do much for a while, but then once I got back on my feet, it was just get healthy, do the right things, and I guess we held on to that hope of getting back at the end of the year, and that sort of kept me going, and I've been able to stay pretty positive throughout the whole thing.
So you talk about making changes and doing things to help yourself recover. What's helped you? What have you been doing apart from you've got your routine, which gets you, your routine helps you bounce back when you're in your absolute lowest. What are the ongoing things that you've found yourself doing to be in a good place mentally and emotionally?
Yeah, a few things. I think obviously having you come in at a pretty good time to Port Adelaide, that sort of showed me just how important it is to daily focus on those things that you want to do well. So I guess, showing empathy, showing gratitude for what we have. Obviously I've got your 6-month journal, and I've been filling that out with my mum, and we send our little daily sort of journal entries with each other over text, and that's sort of been a really good thing for us and our relationship, and just sort of something to keep you on your toes, because I think you can get lazy with it if you don't actually practice it, and it keeps you searching for opportunities to do those things and to get better, and so that's sort of been one thing. I've been reading a whole lot of other stuff, trying to actually educate myself, and just on a happy life and what makes successful people the way they are, and
any recommendations for the listeners?
Well, the old 5 a.m. club that I've been reading, I gave it a go for a couple of days, but 5 a.m. might be pushing it a little bit. Waking up every morning at 5 a.m. But it's a pretty good book, I must admit. The first sort of 150 pages, just some like awesome life lessons, I think. Not taking yourself too seriously, and some little routine things, and self-discipline, how important that is, and what you can do with your day if you really set it up and you plan and you schedule certain things that you want to get done in, and you write them down, how important that is. All that kind of little stuff that I probably wasn't. I just thought I was, I probably thought I was going okay before all this stuff went down. So just little things like that, trying to get involved in as much as I can away from the club, and look for opportunities to do things that, you might not necessarily feel comfortable doing, but, afterwards you feel like a great, much better person. You feel, you get a lot of joy from it. I think doing stuff for other people gives you a lot of joy. So, yeah, little things like that. And then a few commitments to myself, and little habits and things like that just wanted to get on top of.
So how are you now? How are you right now? You seem like a very different person to the last time I caught up with you. You seem pretty full of life at the moment. Is that how you feel, or are you still working your way through a lot of this stuff?
I feel pretty good, I must admit. Yeah, I'm certainly still working through a lot of it, but I think it's like continual growth, really. It's continual improvement, and I think no one's perfect, and that was probably a realization I had to come to as well. I felt like I was the worst person on the planet, and no one else had ever done anything this bad, and that kind of feeling, and that how can I ever tell anyone to do anything ever again in the future, or how can I try and help people going forward, because you got to keep your own backyard clean. But I guess I've realised that you learn from these things, you learn from your mistakes, you become better for it, and you become the person you are for it. And a lot of people have gone through similar things and made mistakes in their life, and learned from it, and been a better person for it. So probably coming to that realisation was a bit of a relief. it gave me that feeling of, it's not the end of the world, and it's not, you can still do a lot of good in the world after making a mistake. So, realizing that has helped me a lot, and I guess keep that journey going of trying to find avenues to get better.
That's a wonderful way to end the interview, I reckon. Jack, thank you so much for being so open with your journey. You've been through a lot, but they say adversity builds resilience, and that's what I see in you. So thank you for being so open and honest and raw today.
Thanks, Hugh.
I gotta keep on myself. Keep on, keep on, keep on, keep on.
Wow. Okay. So first question, how tempting was it for you to open the interview with, "What's up?" Like, did that cross your mind? Because it's all I was thinking about. I mean, it's all, I think when I pressed play, when I first listened to the interview, I thought, please say "What's up?" I don't know if that's a thing that he gets a lot, but that's where my head goes immediately.
Josh and I were so flustered trying to get him going that I didn't have the creativity to think of excellent gags like that. But
Next time.
Next time.
Maybe when you interview Naomi. Naomi, what's up? It's you got to. I mean, it just incentivizes me massively to get Naomi Watts on the show.
Well, you go for that. You slide into.
I don't think Naomi Watts would have Instagram for some reason. Anyway, conversation for another day.
It is.
Not on air. Hugh, I mean, that's just an incredible story, really, from Jack. And I think particularly for me as a Melbourne Footy Club supporter, and I go to the footy a lot, go with my dad and his mates. And so I was there literally from day one of Jack's career, being someone who's been in the stands, like, to be quite honest, like, really frustrated when he's played badly, because it's particularly in the early days when we just so desperately wanted him to somehow save the club. Well, I guess it's not actually possible that's going to happen, but you kind of hope. We would yell out things and just go, "Oh, Jack." But now, listening to him talk about it, what it was like, you just remember that, they're just kids, or they're just people who are just trying their best. Sometimes they don't have a good day. For Jack particularly, he just had a pretty tough start to his career, or tough 10 years at Melbourne, really. It just made me remember the importance of empathy. And I know that, having seen your talk, your Resilience Project talk, empathy is such a huge part of what you talk about. So I thought that might be a good thing to talk about, Definitely. To ask you about. Yeah,
well, I mean, empathy is a huge one. Empathy, we talk about it a lot at the Resilience Project. And so I'm glad this has come up so early on in our podcast series. So empathy, everyone knows what it is. It's the ability to feel what someone else feels, to psychologically feel how someone else feels. We talk about putting yourself in someone else's shoes. We know what it is, but we're not good at it these days. We're so quick to judge, we're so quick to hate. But I mean, the reason empathy is important is because the more empathetic you are, the more likely you are to act in a kind way. And the neuroscience behind kindness is extraordinary.
Yeah, right.
So the brain science says that if you do something nice to someone else, your brain releases this hormone called oxytocin. And oxytocin is what makes us feel happy. It's what makes us feel joy. So I've been really lucky. I've been able to work with the Collingwood Football Club, and Nathan Buckley, their coach.
Yeah.
So I've been saying to people recently, Nathan Buckley's turned his career around with the word empathy. But I've had players say to me, he hasn't turned his career around with it. He's turned his life around with the word empathy.
I remember on grand final day, you told me that story about how you walked with him from the car to the final training session before their grand final, and how you saw him give like 6 very specific compliments to people.
It was extraordinary.
Yeah.
Everyone he walked past, like the Darcy Moore, "I love your hair." That's what he said. "That is great hair." And then Jamie Ellett, a guy called Jamie Ellett, walked past and he'd been in the pool and he had a towel around his waist and he goes, "You are ripped. Look at you." And then everyone who walked past has got this massive compliment. So when we're kind to people, that's kind of what makes us feel happy. So the problem we've got right now, and Jack is an example of it. I'm not saying people boo Jack, they're bad people, but we're so quick to judge other people, to hate other people. But if we're empathetic, we put ourselves in someone else's shoes, we're going to act in a kind way. As opposed to booing, we're going to say, gee, it must be hard being him. So let's put football aside. The other guy who does presentations at Resilience Project is a guy called Martin Heppel. He is the kindest person I've ever met. He is so good at putting himself in other people's shoes. I was in traffic with him. He was driving not too long ago, and traffic was absolute mayhem. And this guy came speeding in and tried to cut in. And my first reaction was, you're kidding yourself, aren't you? Like, go back to the back of the queue. You should have queued up like everyone else. And Martin goes, whoa, this guy's on the way to a job interview. Look at him. He is peaking. And he started saying to the guy, he goes, mate, get in. And Martin started like reversing up and he's pointing at him going, get in there right now. This is you.
Yeah.
And the guy looked, I don't think that's what the guy was doing. But the first thing Martin did was like, this guy's in a hurry.
Yeah.
I'm going to help him out here.
Just to assume the best.
Yeah, assume the best situation. Now, I don't know what the guy's situation was, but I'm telling you right now, I went from going, oh, that's so annoying, that guy's trying to cut in.
As we all would do.
Yeah, and Martin was like, get this guy into traffic. He is late and he's probably going somewhere important. The guy loved it. Martin had a massive thumbs up and I just felt really happy watching that.
Yeah.
We're just too quick to see when you're empathetic, you truly feel, you can really feel what someone else feels. And Martin from the Resilience, but he is non-stop doing things for other people.
Yeah.
And he's just so full of joy because he is always doing things for other people.
And and I think we all can remember a time where we've done something for something, been kind in a way, given someone a lift somewhere or done something that we didn't need to do, but just because it was the right thing to do or whatever it might be. There is definitely a feeling after you do something nice for someone, just out of the goodness of your own heart, it does feel good.
Yeah, and I think that's, listen to Jack's story, I can't help but think it's an example how as a society right now, we're not being as kind as we probably could be to each other. And we're the ones who are suffering because of that. We need to look out for opportunities to be there for each other. And we need to act on it. If you're listening to this with your family or your kids or whatever, there's so many things you can do with your kids. So you can sit down, have a family meeting and say, hey, do we know someone right now who's going through a bit of a tough time? And your kids might say, yeah, this person at school or my teacher and you say, okay, what's something we could do for that person? And you get your kids to go and do it. You say, yeah, I'll give you a lift if you want to go and buy them flowers or whatever you want to do. Just get your kids to experience it.
I mean, it sounds like such a strange conversation, doesn't it? I mean, it's
different, yeah.
And that's the point. It's like we just don't do that.
No.
But we should. Like, it's what a great thing to do.
Yeah, I had to do this. I had to do one of my talks the other day at a hospital, and there were a group of brain surgeons there. One of them put up his hand and he said empathy to me. He said I'd introduced how the Resilience Project, we talk about gratitude, empathy and mindfulness. He said, I don't mind the gratitude stuff. The mindfulness stuff you'll have to convince me on. But I'm telling you right now, with what we know about the brain, empathy is why, that's what makes us feel happy. Wow. Then another guy said, but I reckon mindfulness is a problem because we're not present enough to see opportunities to be there for other people. And they started arguing over, and I was like, guys, they can both be
no one has to win here.
Yeah, but no, someone had to win. So they argued about it. And then this guy said, well, here's my example of why mindfulness is more important. He said, I bought takeaway coffees the other day in a cafe and I had my coffees in one hand and I was on my phone. And there was a lady with a double pram trying to get into the cafe door and she's knocking on the door and she's banging into it. And I didn't even notice. And someone had to push past me to let her in. And he said, I wasn't there. I wasn't totally present. And because of that, I missed the opportunity to be there for someone else. And then he went on this big rant about how that's what we're here to do, to be here for each other, but we're not doing it at the moment.
It's like your story that you told last episode about not taking your phone out.
Yeah, well, it's all interconnected, really, I think. But I think Jack, the story around Jack and what he's been through in his life because of the way that we were quick to hate him for not. I never hated him. I always liked Jack Watts, but and
that's the thing. I don't think anyone ever hated him.
But that's what he felt.
That's what he feels.
That's what he felt. He thought people hate me because he turned up to work and people yelled at him nonstop and saying you're bad at your job or whatever. Not those words, but
yeah. Well, we've all got our own insecurities of things that we hope to be doing well, and you don't want to let people down if that may be the case. And you feel like if you do let them down, then it's the worst possible thing that could happen and everyone's against you.
And that's what he said. He said, I felt like I was letting my family down. I was letting the club down. That's an awful feeling to be living with as a young man who's trying to make his way in the world. That's pretty brutal. And we as a society need to be better at looking out for other people. Yeah. Because we're not great at it at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, with that, it was interesting for me to hear him talk about how his life started as a really such a kind of blessed, lovely, white picket fence type life, upbringing. Great family, good school, good at sports, popular, good looking. But is someone like that who can have it all and have no history or no bad influences growing up, for someone like that to then become, essentially then he talks about becoming depressed when he's sleeping on his mate's couch and he just can't leave the house and he's breaks into tears, here and there every now and again. It's a dark place. So I guess what I wanted to ask is, like, can someone just become depressed? The thing that I always assumed, or I think I was told, or I heard when growing up, was that you either have depression or you don't. And it's like a chemical imbalance in your brain that maybe you're lucky enough not to have it, but you could be unlucky and then you've got it and then you just have to deal with it. So, but with Jack, it doesn't seem like he had any signs of depression until things started going badly.
Yeah, so I think the important thing to understand for the listeners is that mental health is on a spectrum. So the mental health spectrum exists from +5 all the way down to -5. So people who are +5 on the mental health spectrum, they're flourishing, life's great, everything's terrific. Work your way down the scale, you're still on the positives, life's still going pretty well for you. 0, everyone knows what 0 feels like because we move up and down the spectrum, obviously. But 0 is where you don't have any symptoms. You don't have any symptoms of mental ill health. But if someone stopped you in a very honest moment and said, "Are you happy?" Your very honest answer to that question would have to be, "No, I'm not happy."
So that's a 0.
Yeah, 0. And then we work our way into the negatives, where perhaps -1 might be mild symptoms, depression, anxiety. -3 could be, I don't know, with anxiety, maybe panic attacks daily or regularly, and depression, can't get out of bed. And then we get down to -4, -5. That's where we have people in care and hospitalised with mental ill health. So we're all on the spectrum somewhere. According to the statistics, 49% of Australians will actually have a mental illness in their lifetime.
Yeah.
Why is that so high? Because one of the things that causes mental ill health, not the only thing, one of the things that causes mental ill health is trauma. When something really significant goes wrong in your life, like making a mistake like Jack made and then having the whole country being all over the newspapers and it's all everyone's talking about and you feel like the worst person in the world, of course that's going to have a huge impact on your mental health. And he goes from talking about how his first year at Port Adelaide was the happiest he'd ever felt playing football in his life, the happiest he'd ever been. Fast forward a few months and, fast forward a season, he's stuck on his mate's couch and he's breaking into tears. Because trauma had a really big impact on him and he'd just dropped down the mental health spectrum.
I mean, I feel like I read a little bit about that in the book we mentioned last week as well, which is Lost Connections, the Johann Hari book. That was, when I read that was news to me, that anybody can become depressed. And then, but similarly, if you are depressed, you can get out of it. And through a number of ways. And that was news to me. I think a lot of people would assume that if you have depression, that's just something you're stuck with. At
the Resilience Project, we've got an advisory panel of who really helped me with a lot of the stuff we talk about, and one of them was a psychologist, and I chatted to her about this very thing this morning. And in fact, it was in reference to this chat, and she was saying that this is a really important one for people to understand, that when things go wrong in your life, it will have an impact on your mental health, that there comes a point when you realise that there are things that you can do to start to work your way back up. And we heard Jack say in that interview that, looking back, it's the best thing that's ever happened to him.
Oh, I mean, which is, I guess on one hand, it's surprising to hear, but then on the other hand, you sort of think about that and you're like, well, of course, because whenever any of us have experienced something bad, gone through trauma, no matter how hard it is or how down you get, hopefully at some point, and maybe it takes a long time, but you can come out the other end and you've become more resilient from it, stronger from it, or you've learned something from it.
I had a lady come up to me after a talk I did the other day I can't remember what it was, and she said that she had a really bad, really sick with cancer. And she said that exact thing. She said, do you know what? She said, for me, it's the toughest thing I've ever been through, but she said, the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Wow, yeah.
And she said it just put so many things into. So obviously, I'm not comparing a relationship breakdown to going through cancer with Jack, but what it did for Jack was that it made him realise that there were some things in his life that he wasn't happy with, things he was doing he wasn't happy with. It shone a light on them, and he went, I need to change that.
Yep. And most of us know, if you've gone through any sort of trauma, be it being really sick, but also maybe like a relationship breakup, whatever it might have been, we all know that feeling of being so low that you just can't imagine it ending. You just can't quite visualize the feeling of being out of that. But then hopefully, if you're able to get through it, you do get past it. Hopefully you can learn from that, and then when you approach the next relationship or whatever the next job is or whatever it is that has caused the trauma, you approach it in a way with more resilience and more knowledge.
Yeah, you've learnt from it.
Yeah.
I said it before, but that's why Jack was happy to tell me his whole story, because I told him my whole story. I remember after my relationship breakdown, like months after it, thinking, I just want to feel happy again, but that is so far away from me right now. And I remember actually thinking in my head, I wonder if this time next year I'll feel happy again. Yeah. And that's kind of what happens. And no one's immune to trauma. Like, as much as we hate to say it, like, people die and tragic things happen all the time, and no one's immune to it. So it is something we all have to go through at some point. But Jack's been a lovely example of someone who, yes, he struggled a lot, but he's working so hard on his mental health and making sure, he says in the interview, he's still not in a great place, but he's trying to work his way back. And we heard the things he was doing in that interview.
He could have really done with a WhatsApp. I think that would have really lifted his spirits. The real opportunity missed.
I'll send you his number. You can give him.
He's going to love it. I just know he'll appreciate it.
But I think the really important thing to learn, to remember from that is, and what I take from the Jack story is that we're all imperfect. Like, that's the name of the podcast for a reason. But we all stuff up. We all make mistakes. And you can either jump all over someone and kick them while they're down, or you can have a bit of empathy and you can go, well, they've stuffed up, and you can be a bit, I mean, I'm not excusing what Jack did, not for a second, but we got to remember that we're all just people. And
the other thing that is often sort of forgotten in these situations, especially the very public kind of scandals, I guess you'd call them, is the partner. So Jack's ex, who he's just hurt really badly, she's having to deal with this as well. She never asked for it. Everyone says, "Oh, well, he's a professional footballer. This comes with the territory." Well, it doesn't come with the territory for her. She's just fallen in love with this guy, and he's stuffed up. And just like the person on the other end of any mistake like that, they then have to deal with it. So, I guess just wanted to acknowledge the fact that she didn't deserve that. And hopefully she finds someone really nice.
The other thing that we have to acknowledge with her is I don't know her and I don't know her situation, but Jack the next day turns up to a football club the next day. He was surrounded by, there's two people assigned to player welfare who are checking in on him. I happened to be there that day, and for whatever reason he felt like he could tell me what he'd been through. He was surrounded by people that were there for him. Not all of us have that, and I assume his ex-girlfriend probably didn't have that to turn up to as well. So I think whilst we talk about what Jack's been through, acknowledging also that his ex-girlfriend has probably been through an enormous amount is also really important, and probably continuing to go through, I think, is really important as well.
Yeah. And, hopefully people can come out the other end when no matter how bad, people behave or what people do, I think it will help me in how I approach my relationships with people who may have done something wrong in the past, to not hold people to that forever, and to somehow find a way to see them for the person that they are and go past their behaviour at some point.
Well, if that's what that interview does for people listening, I think that's a great result.
Great.
Next week on the podcast, next episode on the podcast will be Erin Deering, who is an extremely successful entrepreneur who... Is that how you say entrepreneur?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Good.
Yeah, entrepreneur.
That sounded better when you said it.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur. Anyway.
You could also pronounce it encyclopedia, but that would be wrong.
Very successful entrepreneur.
You're nailing it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
She started
imperfectly done.
She started the swimwear label Triangle. So,
well, her story is unbelievable. I mean, it's a story that involves. I mean, I don't want to be too pop teasy about it, but getting an email, like one day getting an email from Kendall Jenner about this little swimwear label she's starting, and then 3 years later being a multi-millionaire, and how that affected her life.
So very much looking forward to Erin's interview again. Just like Missy and Jack before her, she's been incredibly candid, and and raw about her struggles. Huge thank you to Jack Watts, who during football season, which I acknowledge is quite difficult, but and during his rehab, he was very, very open, very honest, very accommodating, and we thank him, and we hope that his honesty will help many of the listeners.
Thanks, Hugh.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Josh.
Can I be a fascination?
If this episode has triggered anything for you around mental health, we strongly recommend Lifeline on 131114. The Imperfects is brought to you by the Resilience Project. Produced by Ryan Shelton, Hugh and Josh van Cuylenburg. A very, very special thank you also to No Mono for generously allowing us to use Keep On as the theme song for this podcast.
Hugh, it's Ryan. Craziest thing has happened. Dad and I were just driving around this morning, and you wouldn't believe it, we've ended up in Adelaide, which is, of course, where Jack Watts lives. So I thought, like, it's such a coincidence and seems like a pretty good opportunity. Maybe send me his address, and I can take Dad over and we can have a kick of the footy with him or something like that. So send that through while we're here. As I said, such a coincidence, so weird. And yeah, Dad will be thrilled. So that'd be great. Thanks, Hugh. Speak soon.
To call back, press 22. To replay message, press 1. To reply, press 2. To send a copy.